All right, I am leaving CrossFit. It's early. It's 7 a.m. Monday, December 23rd. I got another thing from Reddit that we're going to go through about clear writing. Let me get these windows cleared off. There's a huge truck behind me. It's kind of sitting in the middle of the road. It's going to be interesting. Everything is foggy. But no one's coming. We're good. Okay. So this one from Reddit's interesting. I do like it. It's regarding writing and writing clearly. So the OP is basically saying, and this is really common actually, like English isn't their first language, and they're kind of getting to a point in their career where they're noticing some of their soft skills, like clear technical writing. It's kind of catching up, where they're like, oh crap, this is pretty important. And they're getting some feedback from their manager that they, I don't know, like need to improve on it, which, it's good feedback to have. And so they're trying to figure out, like, okay, good chunk of the way into my career, and really need to start focusing on this. Like, what should I do, right? So again, this is just I think it's a solid reminder to folks, like, your communication skills are incredibly important. I think they're very undervalued, especially for more junior people getting into software engineering, because there's such a focus on technical skills. And then to the point where we like essentially start neglecting the softer skills. So please, as I put it, pardon me, my lungs are not keeping up with the workout. But as I put out content and stuff, when you hear me talking about soft skills, please don't get annoyed by it. It's just like I need to constantly put out this reminder to folks, like, just how important it is. Before I dive into it, just a reminder, if you want questions answered, write them in the comments. If you want it to be anonymous, or you want to write more detail and you don't want it in the comments, look for Dev Leader on social media. Write me whatever you'd like, within reason, of course. And if I can help, I'll try my best to make a video out of it. And I will do another shout out, because I have a live stream on my main channel, Dev Leader. So if you like this kind of content and you're not necessarily looking for a more polished video, like my main channel has really polished videos. I pay an editor, he does my thumbnails and stuff. There's a lot more tutorials and things like that. If you're not interested in that, but you still like this type of conversation, the live streams that I do Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific on Dev Leader are on topics like this, but there's a live chat, right? It's actually live. So I try to make sure that I'm engaging with the audience. If you have questions that aren't even related to the topic, it is supposed to be more like an AMA, but I always prepare a topic. That topic is always my recent newsletter article, so weekly.devleader.ca, if you want to see what that's going to be about. So please join me on Mondays for that. I think it's a lot of fun. I love answering questions and having conversation in the chat. It's pretty fun. So let's dive into it. So on technical writing and soft skills in general, maybe it's not obvious to some people, maybe it's super obvious when I say it out loud, but soft skills are just like any other skill, right? We have to practice them to get better at them. And like for some people, some of these things do come more naturally. So for example, you might know, maybe you've met people in your life and they're very artistic naturally, right? Like they just seem like they can draw very easily, or some people, they just have some skills that they seem to pick up very easily. They seem to be good at it naturally. That's entirely possible with many skills, right? But that's not the common thing. And essentially, if you believe in growth mindset, and I do, basically all skills can be learned. It doesn't mean that given the same amount of time and effort as someone else, that you'll be at the same level. That's not what I'm suggesting, but I do think that if you want to improve in an area, like your soft skills, for example, or in this case, more specifically for technical writing, I think you have to practice it. And I think that you can make tremendous improvements by practicing this kind of stuff, especially if you're going from like, hey, I never do technical writing and like I'm getting some feedback that it could be improved. Like if you're never doing it, going from like never to at least sometimes, I feel like you'll make a lot of improvements. And I think a key part here too is like having awareness, right? So for example, if you never did technical writing, you're probably not going to be good at it, but because you never do it, you also don't know what aspects of technical writing you're not great at. Because you can probably break down skills into different subcategories, different things to focus on, right? Even to give you an example, just coming from the gym, right? Coming from CrossFit. Today we were bench pressing. Bench pressing is a rare thing that we do in CrossFit, but because my background's like all bodybuilding and powerlifting, there's a lot of bench pressing. So I've spent many years bench pressing, right? But compared to some of the other movements we do in CrossFit, like cleans, jerks, like basically most Olympic lifts where there's some type of overhead movement, those are things that I've never practiced, right? I have an idea what they are, but I've never practiced them until CrossFit. So if we take something like a power clean or a snatch or a jerk, like those skills for me are horrendous compared to bench pressing. But I've spent so many years bench pressing and so little time doing those other movements. So now, the amount of time that I put in when I'm at CrossFit to practice those movements, oh buddy, this is not a good opportunity to move over. The amount of time that I put in to practice a clean or a snatch or a jerk, I will be making significantly greater improvements given the time put in for those things compared to bench pressing, because I've already spent a long time bench pressing. So my point is that, yes, you have to practice, but I do think that when it's something that you haven't done a lot of, you'll make significant improvements, which is great. So having some awareness what to improve on and then putting in the time is going to help. So when this person was describing their technical writing and then some of the comments, I did a brief scan. I think one of the most important things in communication is thinking about your audience. So if you're writing a technical document and it's for other technical stakeholders, you need to understand like what level of understanding they have, right? They might be technical, which is great. You can talk about technical things, but if you're using technical jargon that's specific to this domain that you're talking about and they don't have experience in it, it's going to really reduce the effectiveness of your communication. Okay, so it's one thing for the audience to be technical like you, but it's another thing for them to understand all the technical jargon. And more often than not, I would just suggest that you steer away from technical jargon as much as possible. So things like acronyms, if you can avoid them, I think it really helps. You might have found yourself in this situation where you're in a conversation or you're reading a technical document and it's just filled with acronyms and you're like, I don't know anything about what we're talking about here. And that's just because it's technical jargon that you haven't been exposed to. I work at Microsoft, and I would say like one of the biggest challenges that I have found getting comfortable in different spaces at Microsoft is there are so many acronyms that it feels very difficult. I like to think that my soft skills and communication are pretty decent, given that I'm an engineering manager and I've been doing this for a while, something I have to practice regularly. But even for myself, it's very much like, having to deal with technical jargon and stuff. It's like, it's not going to really matter how good my soft skills are when I just don't know what the acronyms are. So I would highly recommend when you're doing technical writing, try to avoid acronyms as much as possible. If it's something you're going to be repeating a lot and it's like, multiple words that are constantly going to be repeated, definitely try to make it clear right at the beginning that there's an acronym. So write it out, show the short form of it. But definitely if you're talking about like other systems that you're interfacing with, like please just stay away from the acronyms. Technical jargon just really makes it difficult for people to understand. That could also mean you might have names for different systems, and maybe it's not even an acronym, right? But maybe you've given a name to something. If that name is not easily understood to people outside the domain, again, like consider saying, like, we have a system, we call it, our system's called Dorothy. Okay, Dorothy's not even an acronym. What the heck is Dorothy? Well, Dorothy is blah, blah, blah. I don't know why Dorothy even came to my mind. I don't even know of a system called Dorothy. But my point is that you might understand the things, but you're not writing the technical document for you, right? We have to be thinking about who the audience is, always. This is the case for all communication, not just technical writing. The same thing happens in meetings or different conversations. You need to pick terminology, language, phrase things in ways that people are going to understand, introduce topics in ways that make sense for people to start getting the flow of understanding. But this is especially, apparent in technical writing, right? You need to introduce topics to people, make sure they understand what's about to be discussed, and get into it. Something else, so I was scanning the comments, I thought this was good advice, and it's, I think, good to practice. And it means it's a little bit more work sometimes, but I think it's truly worth the effort that goes into it. But it's like starting by being verbose in your writing. And what I mean is, like, so say you've identified for yourself, you find it a little bit challenging to kind of scope down how much you're talking about. You write a lot, right? Because you're trying to put in so many details. But maybe those details, like, aren't in reality, like, you're kind of acknowledging this. Maybe your audience doesn't need every single one of those details, or it's too much, right? You're kind of zooming in too far on the specifics. You could do a first pass like that, and then try to go through and edit your document and start refining things. Start removing details that are too technical. You can move them to an appendix if you think it's important information, but it's almost distracting the level of detail. So that's something that you could do. But the comment, I can't remember the exact words because I don't have it pulled up, but the comment that someone made on this post was like, and maybe it was even the original poster, I can't recall, but this idea that, like, if it's going to take someone 10 minutes to read something, but you could have written it in a way that would take them 5, like, do that. Like, that's what people are going to want. They don't want to spend a ton of time trying to digest and understand what you have to say. Yes, it's technical, but we want to make sure that we can write it in a simple way with the right amount of detail. And no, like, it's not something you're going to get perfect the first time. Don't expect to. That's okay. It's like writing code, right? If you're working on a team or a project for the first time, you put up your first pull request. Odds are the team who's been working in that code base for a while, they're going to have some feedback for you, right? It doesn't mean that, like, you're stupid or you don't know what you're doing. It's just like, these are just opportunities for improvement. So, I would say, like, don't beat yourself up over this kind of stuff. Like, getting feedback is good. It might feel difficult. It might feel like, oh, I'm never making progress on this stuff. But, like, you are, right? Getting feedback is important. I think having awareness that there's room to improve, that's important, right? All of these things, when we're getting feedback, I think are very valuable. And I know that, if the feedback starts to feel like it's one-sided, like, hey, I'm only getting feedback about how to make things better, I understand that can start to feel like, if no one's saying anything good and it's only stuff to improve, therefore I must be doing a bad job. But that's not really true. We can't necessarily conclude that. So, like, try not to invent that in your head, right? People are giving you feedback because they want you to improve. And they think that you're going to do something with that feedback. I think that's another good reminder, right? People don't give you feedback if they're like, oh, well, Jimmy's never going to listen to that. Jimmy doesn't care about anything, right? Why would I give Jimmy feedback if he's just going to ignore it? So people aren't going to waste their time giving you feedback if they don't think you're going to do anything with it. They want you to do better. They're on your side, right? That's why they're giving you the feedback. So try to think about it like a positive thing. which I understand is difficult. Like I I realize what I'm saying is significantly easier said than done, but try to keep that in mind. Another thing that I thought, and this might not be applicable to everyone listening and watching, but hopefully at least some of the audience, right? Someone had said in the comments, like, hey man, like, you should give yourself some credit for trying to do this stuff in a language that's not your first language. Like seriously, kudos to you. And I thought that was a great call out. I find it amazing, right? Like, I only speak English, and sometimes I feel like I'm not even speaking English that well, right? It happens. But I always find it so amazing that people are, we're working with them, they're speaking English, they're writing code in English, and like, it's not even their first language. It's incredible, right? It's incredible. So I think when people are navigating this space and truly English is not their first language, like, try to give yourself some kindness that like you are doing something remarkable. I'm fortunate that I speak English, and that happens to work well for my career. And for folks that's not their first language, like, I mean it sincerely. Like, I don't know if I could do it. So like, I find it extremely impressive. I know that when I've worked with employees from different countries and stuff, in one-on-ones, I will often get feedback that people have concerns about like how they're speaking or how they're communicating. Like, I know it's for many people where English is not their first language. Like, they're like very aware, like they have a lot of focus on it, like they want to do a good job, and they're critical of themselves. And part of me is like, I think it's good that they want to improve and do better, and like this is something that they're paying attention to. Like, I mean, awesome. Like, I think that's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with people trying to focus on areas and trying to get better, but this is something that's like, that's complex, right? To have to find an entirely different language to communicate in. So honestly, like, if you're someone listening or watching, right? If English is not your first language, or you're navigating how to communicate effectively in a completely different language, like, kudos to you. Seriously, it's really remarkable. So do give yourself some kindness, right? Don't beat yourself up over it. Like I said, if I had to pick any language, even if I could pick it, like, I learned a bit of French in elementary school. If I had to go write a clear design document in French, oh my goodness, not gonna happen. But like, if I had to for work, like, I would need to acknowledge the first one is going to be terrible, and it's gonna take me some time to do it effectively. But there's some meta points here, right? Aside from just the language itself, I think how we approach technical writing and clear communication, there's some general guidelines which I tried to touch on. So one is really consider the audience, their level of understanding. Two, try to avoid technical jargon as much as possible. It doesn't really add anything. You're trying to make things concise, generally, I think, but like, by shortening the words until they lose their meaning, it's not really that beneficial. It starts to be a trade-off in the other direction. And then the third one was around conciseness, right? Like, if you can find ways to not completely take some text and blow it up, just like, it's not like I think for some of us that went to college or university or even in high school and stuff, it's like you need to have an X number of word essay, and it's like, okay, how can I take this sentence and make it more words? We're not doing that here. It's the complete opposite. People don't want to waste time, and you shouldn't want to waste their time, right? So if you need to write more verbose things and then edit it down, I think that's a great exercise. Again, details, you don't necessarily have to cut them out. You can move them to an appendix. So that means if you have a bunch of data points you want to go over, and you're like, I think it's valuable, but maybe not, the focal point of this paragraph or something, you could say, like, here's a point, and like follow up in the appendix for other data points or something, right? So I think there's lots of opportunities that way. The final part that I was mentioning was really around like, you know, having awareness, taking feedback. These are things that we, like any skill, we have to practice them, and having a feedback mechanism is very valuable to start guiding you where to put your attention, right? Remember, people want you to succeed. That's why they're giving you the feedback. People don't give you feedback to hurt your feelings. Maybe some assholes do. But if you're working in a place like that, maybe you want to reconsider that. But generally, people are giving you feedback because they are trying to help you and they want you to win. So if you can try to reframe feedback in a positive light, I think it helps you try to take advantage of it and leverage it. So do make sure that you're practicing. This is just like any other skill. That might mean you try to take on more technical writing. That might mean that you try summarizing things, right? You might go out of your way to write a summary for work that you've done. Write a summary if you have like live site issues that you were investigating. Just finding opportunities to practice it with different audiences, I think, can make a huge improvement because you are practicing. Right? It's going to be hard to improve if you're not doing more of it. So I hope you found that helpful. Like I said at the beginning of this, if you have questions and stuff you want answered, write them in the comments or find DevLeader on social media. Send me a message. And I will remind you again, on my main channel, DevLeader, I do a live stream at 7 p.m. Pacific every Monday. So tune into that. I would love to see you there, answer questions live. The topic is almost always the newsletter article. No, you don't have to subscribe to a newsletter if you don't want to read it. It doesn't help me if you subscribe and you don't read it, right? So I'd rather if you just want to check out the topic, you can go to weekly.devleader.ca. I put it out on Saturdays. That means you have all Saturday, all Sunday, and all Monday to check it out before the live stream. So hope to see you on Monday. I'm recording this on a Monday, but I probably won't put it out until tomorrow. So I'll see you next time. Take care.